Okay, hello guys, welcome to today's tutorial on Microsoft Graph Explorer. I'm quite sure that this one is going to be a little more interesting because once I'm done running through the deck, we have a lot of demo and a lot of live demo in stock for you. So let's just get started. Microsoft Graph Explorer. So before we actually talk about Microsoft Graph Explorer, let me just show you what we have in the agenda for this session and what we are exactly going to study in this tutorial. First, we are going to discuss what is an API, and then we will discuss what is a Graph Explorer and the usability, as in why exactly we need the Graph Explorer and how exactly is it integrated with Intune, and what is the idea behind using the Graph Explorer with Intune. Why do we need it? How exactly does it come handy? Then we will be looking at the syntax, as in how exactly we are supposed to make an API call via Graph Explorer. Then we'll be taking just a walkthrough over the Graph Explorer console. We'll be going to the web page, we'll be going through the console, and then I'll be giving a live demo wherein we'll be going through the Ibiza console, and then we'll be seeing that whatever we are actually doing in the console in portal.azure.com, in the background it's actually making a graph call. Then we will be going into the interesting stuff wherein we'll be seeing how exactly can we integrate Intune with Windows PowerShell. Once we have established that, we will be seeing how exactly we can integrate and how exactly we can make an API call via Windows PowerShell. And then at the end of the deck, we have some useful links that we can refer to establish what we are going to do in this session. Okay. All right, then let's get started. Let's just talk about an API first. What is an API before we actually understand what is a graph? Because graph is actually making an API call. So it's incumbent that we understand what is an API. So API stands for Application Programming Interface. So let me give you an analogy, guys, and probably that should help us understand what is an API. So let's just say that there is some data which we want to access. Between us and that data, let's just say that there is a wall that is separating us, from the data. It's like kind of protection. And in that wall, there are some holes. Okay? There are some holes in the wall. Like, or let's just say there are some windows in the wall. Okay? And using that window in the wall, we see what is on the other side of the wall. We put something inside the wall on the other side, and we take something out. Okay? So in this analogy, the window in the wall is actually an API. So an API, we can call it the hole in the wall, which has been made so that we can exchange the data. We can find out, we can see what is on the other side of the wall. We can put something in on the other side, and we can get something out. Okay. All right. So now let's just talk a little technical now and understand how exactly is this example. How can we exactly relate with this example? So API, when we are making an application, we are actually exposing some API. We are doing that. The API is exposed so that a developer can actually look into the data. He can see what is the data, and he can modify that data. So API is a medium, API is a way, or that window via which we are reading the data and via which we are trying to change or modify the data. Okay, so I hope that this analogy is making sense. So whenever anybody is talking about an API, let's just imagine that there is a wall, and on the other side of the wall there is some data. In the wall we have some holes or windows, and those holes or windows are the APIs. So we are going, because we those windows have been made so that we can go via that and see what is on the other side of the wall. That is what is the data, and then we can see the data, we can make changes to the data, we can push something from this side to that side, or we can get something from that side to this side. Okay, so we do that in graph via making a REST API call. Okay, so let's just understand what is a REST API call. So REST is actually a protocol on which the graph works. Okay, and we already know what's a API. API is that whole. So let's just think about this like in a way that we are here. In front of us there is a fence, and in front of that fence there is a wall. Okay, and in that wall we have those holes. Okay, so what we are doing is we are going via the fence into the wall, into the hole, and then we are going on the other side and we are viewing the data. If we have to get some data, how will we be doing that? We will be grabbing that data, getting that out of the hole which is there in the wall via the fence, and then it will come back to us. So in this analogy, the fence is the graph. Okay, and then we have the wall. In that wall we have the hole, which is the API. Okay, so graph or the fence is the medium via which we are making the API calls. Okay, so as I said, if we have to get to the data, we go via the fence, because the fence is between us and the wall. So we are going via the fence into the hole of the wall. Okay, so when we are trying to access any data, what we are going to do? We are going via the graph and making a REST API call, and then we are able to access the data. Not only we can access and see the data, but we can get something out of that database as well. So we can modify that data as well. Okay, so graph in technical terms is a layer which is sitting between the applications and the services. Okay, so graph is actually a medium via which we are doing the REST API calls, making use of the Azure functionality, and then we are talking to the application. We are talking to the application, we are seeing the data behind that application, and eventually we are modifying the data of the application. Okay, so I hope that this makes sense, that what exactly is API, what exactly is graph, how exactly it's sitting in between, so, and how exactly we are making an API call. So I also want you guys to understand that graph is not the only way of making an API call. Like as I said, there is a fence. When between us and the wall, there is this fence, which I'm referring to as graph. If you're on the other side, there is another kind of fence. You have to go via a fence. Over here, I'm referring to the fence as graph. There are other kinds of fence as well. So what I'm trying to say is, if we have to get to the data, we have to go into the hole in the wall. That is, we have to make a REST API call. And in order to do that, we have to go via the fence. In this case, the fence is the graph. There are other fence as well, which we will see later on. Okay. All right. So I hope that this helps us understand what is an API and what is a graph and where exactly does it fit. Okay. So now let's just look at the flow diagram, as in how exactly an application is talking. So in the top, we can see that we have all the SaaS application, as in we have got Office 0365, we have got Intune, we have got Azure Identity, we have got ATP, we have got all the cloud applications. Okay, so that is us. Okay, we are trying that is us. In this case, that is Intune. So between us and the end point, which you can see at the bottom of the screen, like we have iOS, Android, PHP, Xamarin. Between us and that data and that sample code lies the Microsoft Graph. Okay, it's that fence. So how we are going to go from Intune on the top of the stack to the data is via the fence. Okay, one of the ways is via the fence, via graph. So when we go via that graph, the first thing that we need to do is authentication and authorization. Okay, so when we are making a REST API call, what we are doing is we are going via the fence. We are making use of a medium, that is graph, and we have to obviously authenticate and authorize ourselves. Once we do that, then we are able to access the data. I just want you to have a roundabout view of this diagram. When I'm talking about authenticate and authorize, I'm actually going to show it in the demo, that how exactly the authentication authorization happens, what token we actually get, how that token actually looks, and without that token, how and why we are not able to access the data. Okay, so for now, let's just keep this in mind, that we are at the top of the stack in Intune, and on the in front of us we have the fence, which is the graph. Via the fence, we are going into the wall, which has the APIs. We are making REST API calls. We are doing our authorization and authentication. We are getting a token from Azure, and then we are able to eventually read the data and modify the data. Okay, so as I said, just for our knowledge, what we do is we make a REST API call. REST is actually a protocol, as I said, which Graph listens on. It stands for Representational State Transfer. And whatever data that we get via Graph, so we are making an API call, a REST API call. We are getting the data via that hole. So whatever data that we are getting, that data is in the JSON format. Okay, so JSON actually stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It has that strange format wherein we can see curly braces, round braces, comma. It's actually a format. It looks kind of different. We will actually be seeing how exactly JSON format data looks like. Okay, all right. There is one more term which we need to keep in mind, that is OData. OData is actually a protocol. It stands for Open Data Protocol. So when we are actually trying to see the data, what we actually do is we do a get command. We send a get command, that is via the fence again into the hole in the wall. We are just going on to the other side and we are doing a get. That is, we are trying to see what is in that data, what is in the database on the other side. If we want to change the data or modify the data, we can do a post or a patch. Okay, so these are just one of the kinds of commands that we can actually pass and then modify or play with the data. Okay, all right. So these are basic terms which I wanted us to keep in mind. Okay, so I hope that now this diagram is making sense to us, and this will actually make more sense to us when we run through the entire deck and when we actually see the demo. Okay, so without wasting more time, let's just go ahead and let's just try to understand that. Okay, we know what is graph, we know what is REST API, but why do we exactly need the graph? What is the use of it? I mean, there has to be some sense behind laying this fence. There has to be some sense behind making use of this fence. So let's just try to understand what exactly is Graph, what exactly is Graph Explorer, and how and when and why do we need it. Okay. So as I said, guys, in the beginning, Graph Explorer is a medium. Okay. What is this medium used for? It actually enables us to access all the data of the cloud hosted application. May that be SharePoint, may that be Exchange Online, may that be Outlook, may that be OneDrive, Teams, OneNote, Intune, etc. So what Graph Explorer is doing is, it is enabling us to access the data of the cloud hosted applications via their API. Okay, so there are some APIs for all these applications which have been exposed willingly. So as I said, just remember that analogy. Let's just say that there is Intune. Behind Intune there is that wall, and in that wall we have exposed some holes so that via Graph Explorer we can see the data and modify the data. So what Graph Explorer is doing is, it's providing us that ability to go via, to make that API call and see the data of cloud hosted application and modify that data. How? Via the APIs. Okay, via making a REST API call. Okay. So now, when would exactly this be useful with respect to Intune? When would exactly we be needing the Graph Explorer? What is the use case? So let's just say that so how do we usually do this? How do we usually see the data? We usually see the data via the Ibiza console, right? By going into portal.azure.com and then going into Microsoft Intune, and then going via the various blades. We can go to devices, device configuration, applications, whatnot. Okay, so that is what we usually do. So let's just think about a scenario wherein the portal is not responding. Okay, or when we are clicking on the portal, it's giving us a 404 error. What do we do then? That is when the Graph Explorer comes handy. And I also want you guys to know that when we are clicking on any blade in the portal, it is in the background actually making a graph call. It is in the background actually making a REST API call. So if we have to access the data, we can either go via the fence, that is Graph Explorer, or we can open up the Ibiza console, that is portal.azure.com, go into Microsoft Intune, click on the various blades. Whenever, let's just say we click on devices, it shows all the devices, right? How does it show that? It in the background is running a REST API call for us, fetching the data, and it is just displaying the data in a pretty format for us. So it's not, so it's an ease of access, so to speak. So Graph Explorer, in Graph Explorer, we'll have to actually run the REST API calls, but the Ibiza console is actually running that call for us and returning and gathering the data which the REST API is returning and displaying it in a pretty format. Okay, so let's just say that, so what is the use case? The use case is, let's just say that for some reason, the Ibiza console is not working, or the Ibiza console is giving us a 404 error. Okay, what do we do then? How do we exactly find out that what is the data? Let's just say that we are clicking on device configuration and we're not able to see the policies that have been configured. What do we do then? We can make a REST API call in the Graph Explorer and then see what's the data it is returning. And depending upon that, we will be able to understand what are the policies that have been created. So let me give you a practical example, guys. I came across a scenario wherein users were enrolling their devices, and when they were enrolling their devices, they were clicking on a device category. So the admin had configured a device category, which was mandate. There were two categories, personal and corporate. And when the user was enrolling his device, during the phase of enrollment, he was able to see those two categories. If his device was personal, the user was choosing personal. If his device was corporate, the user was choosing corporate. One of the categories that he could see during enrollment. Okay, and it was a mandate. The enrollment wouldn't go through if the user actually doesn't select one of the device categories. Okay, so the issue was user was selecting a category, the device was getting enrolled, but when we were checking in the Ibiza console, the console was not showing any category. Okay, so how exactly did we use Graph Explorer in this case was we clicked on the device, and when we clicked on that device category, it was showing as unassigned. It was not showing as any category. Okay, we made a graph call, and in the graph call we saw what is the data that the graph call was returning. We analyzed that data and we saw that the graph call was returning and saying that the user had selected personal when he enrolled his device, meaning that the database had the correct information. When the portal was making a REST API call and fetching that data, the portal was not displaying it. So, I mean, what I'm trying to say here, and then we involved the relevant team and tried to figure it out. That so we from this we concluded that it was a portal related issue. The database was correct, the database was correctly populated, but the portal, when it was for some reason making that REST API call, was either not getting the correct data, or if it was getting the correct data, it was not displaying it properly. So the use case for this is we would actually be using Graph Explorer when we have some issues with what is being displayed in the portal, what is being displayed in the Ibiza console, and to double check or substantiate that, because as I said, whatever we are doing in the Ibiza console, in the backend it's actually doing a graph call, a REST API call, right? And the other use case for making use of Graph Explorer or the REST API calls is automation. So let's just say that we have to make several calls. What we'll have to do from the Ibiza console is we'll have to make so many clicks or change it. Not just, I mean, from when we are, as I said, when we are clicking on anything in the Ibiza console, it's making a REST API call, right, at the background. Not only when we are reading the data, but also when we are writing the data. As in, if we are creating a policy in the Ibiza console, it's making a REST API call as well. So let's just say that we have to make 100 policies at the same time with different names. How do we do that? We'll have to click on the policy, create policy 100 times, select the parameters 100 times. That's one way of doing that. The other way of doing that is making use of the REST API calls and automating it. We have several tools to do that. Okay, we'll come to that. We will see that in the actual demo. Okay, so I just wanted you guys to understand what is the use case, when exactly do we need the Graph Explorer, and how exactly is that useful. Okay, just one thing that we need to keep in mind before we actually proceed with this is Graph Explorer is actually meant for the Ibiza console and not for the Silverlight console. Okay, so Graph Explorer was designed for Ibiza, not for Silverlight. So if we want to get any information from a device that was enrolled in the Silverlight portal, we will not be able to get those device information. We will only be able to get the information which are there in Azure. That is, let's just say that there were 10 Windows machines, 5 of them were registered to Azure AD, and rest 5 were Azure AD registered as well as enrolled to Intune. So we will be able to get information of those 10 devices, which will be shown as Azure AD registered when we make the REST API calls. But we will not be able to get the information of those 5 devices which are enrolled to Intune via the Silverlight console. Because as I said, Graph Explorer was not designed for Silverlight, it was only designed for Ibiza. Okay, and as that goes without saying that using Graph Explorer, not only we can get information of Intune, but we can get information of Azure as well. Okay, so I hope that this helps us to understand why exactly we need the graph and where exactly would be using it. The demo would help us understand it better. Okay, so now let's just talk about an API call, a REST API call. What is a REST API call and how do we make that? Okay, so one of the ways, as I said, of making a REST API call is by using our medium, is by going via the fence, that is the Graph Explorer. So if we are making a call via Graph Explorer, this is the syntax that we would be typically using. First, we will be putting in the URL, that is https://graph.microsoft.com. This would always remain the same. And then, depending upon the use case, we'll have to put in a version, we'll have to put in a resource, we'll have to put in an ID, and then we'll have to put in a property. And then we can query that property. Okay. Let's just see what this actually means. Let's just say that I am to find out all the devices that are enrolled to my Intune tenant. What exactly, let's just try to imagine what exactly would the syntax for that be. Okay. So as I said, the syntax for that would be https://graph.microsoft.com/ because that is something which is always stagnant, it never changes. Then we have to put in the version. So we have got two versions when we are trying to make a REST API call via Graph Explorer. One of the version is version v1.0 and the other version is beta. So version 1.0 is the recommended version because all the APIs because generally all the APIs are present in version 1.0 and they are not subjected to change. However, we have another version as well, which we refer to it as beta. These are still in preview and these are subjected to change. So we can make use of it. We can make use of the beta version as well, but they are subjected to change. Okay. So how exactly, let's just say that we are making use of version 1.0. Okay. So how exactly does our Graph API call look like? https://graphs.microsoft.com/v1.0/ the resource. Okay. Now from the portal we can either go to Azure AD or we can go to Microsoft Intune, right? If we have subscription for both. In this case, we are trying to look at all the devices enrolled to Intune, right? So obviously we'll be clicking at Microsoft Intune and then devices, right? So when we click on Microsoft Intune, the resource we are referring to as is device management. So device management is actually the resource here. Okay. So when we're clicking on device management, then we go to, that is, device management is like Microsoft Intune. And then if we want to look at the devices, we can either put in a specific device ID, or if we are just clicking on the devices and not selecting a device, it will return all the devices information. Okay. Now let's talk about the ways of accessing the information. So as I said, we can either go via the whole and see the data or modify the data. If we are just seeing the data, then the kind of command that we are going to run is a get command. Okay, it makes sense over here, right? Because all we are doing is we are just trying to fetch the information. If we are trying to modify the information, we can do a post or a patch. So patch is for modifying an existing information. Post is for creating, let's just say we are creating a new policy. That over there we will be using a post. Okay. We have something called delete as well and put as well. So delete, self-explanatory, we are deleting it. Put, I haven't seen this a lot in my experience, but yeah. So these are the kind of commands that we can possibly run. These are the ways that we can possibly do a Graph API call. Okay. We refer to them as HTTP verbs. Okay. So we can either get the information, we can modify the information, create a new information, delete the information, or make these kinds of changes. Okay, so the syntax actually kind follows a hierarchy. Okay, so let's just say that we are going into Microsoft Intune, because if we look at the portal, if we just imagine the portal, I'm not going switching to the portal right now, because before doing that, let's just try to imagine and visualize it. If we are going to the devices, how exactly are we going to the devices enrolled to Intune? We are going into portal.azure.com and then going into Microsoft Intune and then going into devices. Okay, how exactly are we going into the device configuration? We are going again into portal.azure.com and then into Microsoft Intune and then into devices and then into device configuration or device uh, I mean subcategories of devices, right? So it in a way follows the tree hierarchy. In any and every case, we are first going into Microsoft Intune, and then we are going into devices, which is listing all the devices. If we don't want the devices, if we want the device configuration, we are clicking on the device configuration blade, which again comes under Microsoft Intune, because that's where we clicked at the first place. If we want the device compliance, we will be clicking on device compliance rather than on device configuration, which again comes under Microsoft Intune. If we just want one device and not all the devices, then after clicking on devices tab, we will be clicking on a specific device. So what I'm trying to say is this is like kind of a tree. There is a hierarchy. On the top level, we have Microsoft Intune, and below that we have, let's just say, one branch is devices, and under that branch there are sub branches. Each branch is for a specific device. The other branches, let's just say, for device compliance, the other branches for device configuration. All the device related branches are coming under the same branch, that is Microsoft Intune. Okay, so what I'm trying to say is that the syntax would make sense when we actually type it out, because it follows that tree hierarchy. Okay, all right. So now let's just take a look over the query parameters. So I'm not going to go into detail of the query parameters right now. We will be actually trying all of them out and seeing how exactly it works when we run a query. Okay, so let's just say that we are making a query. So how exactly did our query look until now? It was https://graphs.microsoft.com/version1/device management, which is the root, which is the the top of the hierarchy, which is like Microsoft Intune. And then we can, let's just say, devices, which would mean that we are clicking on the devices blade, which is returning all the information of all the devices in our tenant. Okay, now let's just say that I don't want information of all the devices. I just want information of, let's just say, devices which are running with a specific version of OS, or devices which have been enrolled by a specific UPN, or just top 20 devices, or something like that, right? We are formatting the output that we are going to get. That is something which we do via using this query parameter. Okay, so it's like kind of if we are running a PowerShell script, right? So we like use select object or something like that, right? So this is similar to this. So we can use query parameters like select, wherein we can select a specific kind of attribute of what the output is returning, or we can use order by format, kind of self-explanatory, right? We will actually be seeing a live example of this, and we'll see how exactly a query parameter looks like. Okay, all right. Now let's just talk about what is Graph Explorer. As I said, Graph Explorer is the fence, it's the medium, it's a tool. Graph Explorer in technical term is a tool which we can use to test and work with the APIs. So Graph Explorer, the fence, it's letting us go to the wall via the window or the hole into the data. So it's a tool, it's a medium which is letting us go to the hole, that is go to the API and test and work with it. Just one thing that we need to keep in mind regarding Graph Explorer, and that is Using Graph Explorer, we cannot do automation. Okay, so in via Graph Explorer, is a medium, as I said. Via that we are making REST API calls, but over here we can make only one call at a time. We cannot automate it. There are ways to automate it, but not via Graph Explorer. We will be seeing how exactly we can automate that as well using PowerShell, how exactly the integration works. We'll be seeing that later. But for now, let's just keep this in mind that Graph Explorer is a medium to work with the APIs, and it cannot be used to implement scripts or for automation. Okay, so how exactly would the Graph Explorer console look like? The Graph Explorer console would something look like this. If all we have to do is we have to open up any browser, and over there we have to type the URL aka.ms/ge. So that's the URL which redirects us to developer.microsoft.com, Graphs, and then Graph Explorer. In the screenshot, you can see that I am at the Graph Explorer. This is where the website takes us to. And now let's just try to understand what exactly is this console trying to tell us. Okay, this is the same screenshot, but various fields have been highlighted. On the left hand side, the first thing that you can see is sign in with Microsoft. Obviously, if I'm trying to make a REST API call and trying to access the data, I have to be authorized and authenticated, right? So if you remember the initial diagram in the flow, we had that OpenID Connect and OAuth, right, which is doing the authorization and authentication. Now also in the screenshot we can see that there is a get. So that's the kind of command that we are making. So instead of get, we can also use delete or put or patch or post, anything like that. Okay, next to that is the version. In the drop down, it gives us two options, v1.0 and beta. So depending upon whichever we want to use, we can make use of that. After that is the syntax. So over in the syntax, we can see that it has https:/graphs.microsoft.com/ the variable part, that is v1.0, followed by whatever we are going to run. Okay, so whatever we put in over here, then we click on the blue tab right next to it called the run query. When we click on that, a query runs. There are two ways of running a query. One is just running a query like this via get, and the one is running, let's just say that we are running a post query. Okay, so if we are running a post, let's just say that we are trying to create a policy. So if we are creating a policy, we'll have to go to that endpoint, that is https:/graphs.microsoft.com version 1 device management and whatever the endpoint would be. And then before we run the query, we will actually have to tell the service what kind of policy we want to make. What is the name of the policy? What are the parameters of that policy? So that is something which comes under the request body. So when we are doing a get, the request body is empty. When we are doing a post or a patch, we have to put in the relevant information in a request body. Okay, so whatever changes we want to make via that Graph API call, via that REST API call, is what we put in the request body. Okay, and the response preview, as you can see below, is what the service responds. So let's just say that I have made a policy. After making a policy, all the policy related information is what the service returns to us. That is something which we can see in the response preview. Okay, we'll be actually seeing how this works. So over here, this is a screenshot of when I made a normal get query. Okay, so what I did was I went to https:/graphs.microsoft.com version 1. I was logged in via a user called Megan. So it was giving the information of that user. Okay, I made a graph call, and in the response preview in the bottom of the page, you can see what the service responded to my Graph API call. So it responded saying the ID of the user, the phone number, the display name, and the job title, the email address. So whatever we can see in the portal is what the information is the information that we are able to see over here. Okay? Okay, guys. So now let's just do the fun part now. So we have taken a snippet look over how exactly the Graph Explorer looks like. So now let's just open up the Graph Explorer and see how exactly it's going to look. Okay? So I'm going to open up Edge. This is my preferred browser. So what I'm going to do is portal.azure.com and okay, there you go. I'm going to go to another tab and I am going to go to ak.ms/ge. Okay, so as I said, this is the URL for accessing Graph Explorer. It redirects us to https://developer.microsoft.com en-us Graph Explorer. Okay, so this is the console that we were looking at. The first thing that we need to do is authenticate and authorize. Okay, so I will have to sign in to the Graph Explorer. So I've clicked on the sign in option. Now it's telling me to sign in with a credential, so I'm going to select my credential. Okay, so now I am signed in. Okay, after signing in, the first thing that we need to do is provide the account that has been used to sign in appropriate permission. Okay, anybody and everybody cannot just sign in and start accessing the data. He has to be provided the permission. Okay, so what we'll have to do is we'll have to click on this modify permission tab. We'll have to click on that and then provide this account permission to access the data. So the permission that is needed for this account to access the data for Intune is the ones that start with devices. Okay, so everything that starts with the devices is the permission that is needed in this case. This is not the first time that I'm logging in. Therefore, these permissions have already been provided by me, and you can see it says consented. If you're logging in for the first time, it will show like this for all the fields. And then let's just say for device management, RBA, rollback administrator console. So for that, we will have to click right next to it, and then we will have to do a modify permission. That is, we'll have to provide the permission. Okay, I've already done that. Therefore, in my case, it is not. It is already grayed out and says consented. But just provide permission to everything that starts with device, and you will be able to run the REST API calls with respect to Intune. Okay, so that's the first thing that we need to do. Once that has been done, then we are all set. Okay, so let's just do this. Let's just do something very basic. So if I run a query for this, let's just see what is it returning. Right now I'm running a query for https://graphs.microsoft.com version 1 me. Over here, me is the person who is logged in. That is me, that is Saurabh Sarkar. So now it's returning every and all the information related to my user account. It is giving us my phone number, it is giving us my display name, my email address, and my UPN, my user ID. Okay, all right, let's just do this. Let me just do users. So if I run a query https://graphs.microsoft.com version 1 users, what should it show? Obviously it should show a list of all the users that are there in the tenant, and that is exactly what this is showing. Now you can see that the value is, I have a user called admin, I have a user called cloud user. If I scroll down, I can see I have a user called demo. I have a user called Greg Shields. I'm a big fan of his. So if I scroll down, these are all the users that I have and all the attributes of that user. Okay, all right. So now let's just use a few parameters and see. Okay, let's just do this. Let's just do a query parameter. So what I'm going to do is, I don't want a list of all the users that are there in my tenant. I want only the users who are starting with, let's just say, S. So how do I do that? I run the same query, that is https://graphs.microsoft.com version 1 users, and then in the users I do this. I do a filter, and then I do a starts with. Okay, I am looking at the display name. So I am saying that if the display name starts with a S, return me those values only. Okay, so how do I do that? I write display name slash in quotes S. Let's just run a query, and there you go. It has now returned not all the users, but it has returned the entry of this user, Saurabh Sarkar, and I have another user named SCC admin, and I have another user named Saurabh1. So now it returned only the users whose display name starts with a S. Okay, so this is how we actually use a filter parameter. So let's just do something more neat here. Let's just say that I wanted not all the users, but a user whose user principal name is this. I just want the information of this user, whether this user exists or not. So for that, we will have to modify the search criteria. So now I'm not going to do a starts with. Now I am going to run the query at https://graphs.microsoft.com/users/ question mark $filter is equal to whose user principal name equals this. So I don't want information of all the users. I only want information of a user whose UPN is equal to this. And let's see, what did the REST API call return? Just one value of that user whose UPN is this. Okay, so these are some query parameters that we can run. There are a whole list of them. We can refer to the documentation for that. Let's just say that I don't want all these information. I just want list of all the users in my tenant, but I don't want everything. I want just their UPN and their phone number, or just their UPN and their display name. So the query would be again https://graphs.microsoft.com/users, and then the similar thing. Now we are doing a select. So remember I said that these query parameters are like the ones that we would use typically in something called PowerShell. So in PowerShell, if I have to run a similar command, what we would do is we would do a select -object, right? So over here we are also doing select object kind of a thing. So over here the what we are writing is only select equal to, let's just say I want only the email and the user principal name. Okay, that's all I want. I don't want everything. And I run a query. Rightly so, it returned the information of the email address and the user principal name of all the users in my tenant. Some users have a email address, some users don't. Like this user has an email address and a UPN. If it doesn't, it will reply with a null value. Okay, so these are some ways in which we can typically run the query parameters and then filter the output, make it look more pretty. Okay, all right. So this was just a general walkthrough of the graph. Now let's just go back to the portal, and I'm going into Microsoft Intune because that's what we are dealing with over here, right? So if you mentioned, whenever we click on Microsoft Intune, it actually takes us to device management.microsoft.com. So instead of going to portal.azure.com, we can directly go to this website and it will give us the same information. Okay, so let's just say that I am going into devices and I'm in the overview. So what I want to show you guys is, whenever, as I said, if you remember, whenever we are clicking on any of these blades, in the background, it is actually doing a call like this. It's getting a data like this, and it is displaying it to us in this format in a prettier way. But whenever we are clicking on something in the portal, in the background it's doing the same thing. It's running a graph call for us. I can prove it to you. How exactly do I prove it to you? Let me just go close this. Let me just go back to Microsoft Intune. Now what I'm going to do is I will be clicking on device. But before I click on device, I am going to start the developer tab. So for that, all the browsers have a developer tab. So irrespective of whether you're using Internet Explorer, Edge, Chrome, Firefox, Mozilla, whatever you are, Chrome, irrespective of what we are using, if we press the F12, it's going to open up the developer tab. Okay, so over here the developer tab is open. I am going to clear everything. Okay, just make sure that we capture only the information that we need. Now I'm going to click on devices. It takes us to it shows us the overview, right? Now I'm going to do a stop over here. And in the background, you can see that it has done so many get calls. Okay, the get method. Because right now, what we actually did in the portal was, we did not create any policy. We did not create anything. All we did was we clicked on a tab, and when we clicked on the tab, what we expect is we expect a list of data for the Intune service to return. Like if we are clicking on devices, we expect the Intune service to tell us the devices that have been enrolled to my tenant, right? So we are just fetching the information. And what kind of HTTP verb are we using in the graph call? We are using a get. Okay, so right now we did a get call, and let's just see what did the portal respond with. So let's just click on the get call over here. Okay, let's just click on this one which says manage devices. Let me just expand it a little so that we can have a better view. Okay, we will go into the body and we will see this. So what we did was, first we are at the headers. We made a get request, right? Where did we go to? We went to https://graphs.microsoft.com beta device management managed devices overview. This is where we went. Where are we? We are at the devices. We went to Microsoft Intune. So Microsoft Intune is the top of the tree, which means we Over here, it translates to device management, and then managed devices overview. Where are we? We are at the overview. Okay. So this is the URL that we hit to, and if we go into the body over here, we can actually see what we are telling to the Intune service and what is the Intune service replying us with. Okay, so the request body is what we are telling the Intune service. So we will actually be able to see something in the request body. Let's just say that when we are trying to make a new policy. So when we are making a policy, in that case, we tell the portal, we tell the Intune service that I want to make a policy with this name, with this parameter. In this case, I'm not making anything. I'm just asking the Intune console to fetch this information from the Intune service. So obviously, the request body will be empty and the response body will have some information. What does that response body information have? The response body information have these information. It has an ID. What ID is this? The user ID, the ID of the user who has been logged in. Enrolled device count is 7. Did you see that? I'm sorry, I think I moved to the end. There you go. Enrolled device count is 7. In the portal, we can see that the enrolled device count is 6. For some reason, this is not updated. So probably the device has not reached back over here and updated that number of devices is 7. I think it corresponds to the MDM enrolled count as 6. I think this is what we are looking at. Enrolled devices as 6. Okay. So what else do we see over here? Last modified date, last modified time. Okay. Last updated is 12/23. 12/23, last modified date. So what I'm trying to say, guys, is when we are clicking on anything in the portal, at the background, it is making this REST API call. It's reaching out to the Intune service. The Intune service is responding with this response body. We are getting this information. This information is then translated into this. I know that there is a whole lot of information over here. And over here, we don't have all that information because by default, not everything gets displayed over here. Only what is important gets displayed over here. So, but the Graph API call is getting a lot of information. Like over here, we can see that there are 2 iOS devices. Over here, we can see that the iOS count is 2, Mac count is 0, right? So what I'm trying to say is whatever we are seeing over here should correspond with whatever the data that is coming over here. If it doesn't, please keep this in mind. If it doesn't, then there is some issue with the display in the portal. There is some issue with how the portal is comprehending that information. Okay? All right, guys. So now let's just let me just do a clear over here. Let me just do a clear session. I'm recording everything, and now I'm going to all devices. Okay. So what did it return? All the devices that are enrolled to my tenant. I'm going back over here, stopping it, and you can see that I have made a get call. Okay, the result is 200. So whatever result we see over here is typically the result that we would see in a HTTP or HTTPS kind of a request, because this is graph calls are at the end of the day HTTP or HTTPS kind of a request. Okay, so if we are trying to fetch an information, that is, we are doing a get kind of information, get kind of a command, then the result should ideally be 200. If we are trying to modify, the result should ideally be a 201, which is successful. If it is a failure, it would give us something like 404 or 403 or something like that. Okay. So what we did was, when we clicked on manage devices, first let's just click on this one, and we clicked on that. And first the portal reached out to the Intune service, and what did the portal do? The portal tried to find out what are its options, what can it exactly do. So it went to the URL https://graphs.microsoft.com beta device management manage devices, because we clicked on devices, we have not selected a specific device. And then it did a top 27, so it only lists the top 27 devices, and we have to click on load more. It did a options call and went to the Intune service and said that what are my options. This was the request header. What did the Intune service respond with? It said your options are this. You can do a delete, a get, a merge, an options, a post, a put, a patch. What did we actually do? We did a get. So we did a get. Let's just see what is the body of the get. So in the request body, there is not going to be anything. Because we are doing a get, we are not making any change. When we make a change, that is when we will be able to see anything in the request body. Right now, we are not requesting anything. We are just doing a get. Therefore, the Intune service is coming back with all these information, what we can see over here. Let's just see how exactly it looks in the portal. And over here, you can see that it is giving us the output in the JSON format. Okay, so in the response body, I can see that data count, there are 4, 5, 6, there should be 7 devices, because over here I can see that data count is 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Sure enough, we have got 7 devices. Over here we can see the device name managed by ownership, compliant, OS version for each device. Over here, sure enough, we should be able to see this is the first device, client name, and then all the information related to that device, the UPN who has enrolled that device, and the device ID. It's managed by MDM, the OS, last sync time, whether it's personal or corporate. That's for the first device. Similarly, if we scroll down, we will be able to see the same information for all the devices. The device that has been enrolled by this UPN, the name of the device type, the device action, phone number, everything that we are seeing over here is what we see over here, because this is the response that the Intune service replied with when we made the graph call. This is the graph call that we made. https://graphs.microsoft.com beta device management managed devices. Okay, so let's just do this. Let's just go over here and beta device management managed devices. Oops, devices. So this output that we can see over here, this output and this output is exactly the same. What does this prove? This proves that when we are making a graph call when we are making a REST API call via the Graph Explorer, or when we are clicking on the similar corresponding blade and tracking the graph call that has been made in the developer tab, the output is the same, meaning that in the background this is also making a similar kind of a graph call, a graph REST API call in the background. Okay, all right, so now let's just do something fun now. So let's just go to a specific device. I'm going to click on this specific device. Okay, before I do that, let me just do a clear. I'm clearing everything. I'm capturing everything. Now I'm clicking on this. Okay. All right. This is what it displays. I'm going to stop it, and then I am going to see where exactly the request went. This is where the request went. https://graphs@microsoft.com beta device management, and then manage devices, and then there is a device ID. Okay, what does the device ID end with? It ends with a 7A. Okay, let's just see what is the actual device ID of that device. The actual device ID of this device is this, which ends with 7A. Okay, what exactly is it showing us right now? These information. What exactly is this showing us right now? If you can see at the end of the URL, select is equal to ID hardware information, and then log bypass code, UUID, role scope tag, etc, etc, etc. This is all the information that we see over here. If we go into hardware, we will see more information, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let's just see what exactly is there in the request body. Surely enough, nothing is there, because we are just doing a get kind of a command, which is giving us a 200 kind of a result. That is a successful result in JSON format. The response body, we can see over here what exactly is it responding with. It's giving us the serial number of the device. Over here we can see the serial number of the device ending with 77 is the same serial number ending with 77, and then the total storage space, the free space, the phone number, the device name, the device hardware name, all the information that we are seeing up over here. And all right, this might have some additional information, and as I said, that everything is not displayed over here because I mean, all the information that we're getting is not important to begin with, right? I mean, it has a whole bunch of information. So let's just do this. Let's just do something more fun. Let's just clear this, make sure that I'm capturing it. Let's just do a sync. Yes, sync initiated. I'm going back, I'm stopping it, and over here I should be able to see, surely enough, I'm able to see a post method, because right now it's not get. We are not saying that just go and get the information that is present in the database. We are running a sync, so that's a post command. We are making some changes, and where exactly is it hitting? Graphs.microsoft.com beta device management, manage devices, the device ID, and then sync device. Okay, right now nothing was there to be synced, therefore there was no payload of data. Makes sense, right? Okay, all right, now let's just do something which would make more sense. Let's just create a policy from the Ibiza console and see exactly what happens at the backend. What kind of graph query, what kind of REST API query does the graph make for us at the backend? Okay, all right. Let's just do a device configuration policy, shall we? Okay. I am going to do I'm going to create a device configuration policy for iOS. Okay, so I go create. Let's just call it a demo device configuration policy. Okay, this is a demo device config policy. The platform is iOS. Yes, it is iOS. I am doing a device restriction. I just want to put in a password restriction on the iOS devices. Okay. So I'll go into the settings and then password. Let's just say that my device should require an alphanumeric password. So password require, simple passwords blocked, require password type, I want alphanumeric, which should have at least 2 non-alphanumeric characters. The password length should be 10. Okay. I'm creating a policy that all my devices should have a password and the password length should be 10. Okay. Other than that, everything is fine. Okay, let's just do a okay. Let's just see if anything else is there which we can meddle with. All right, restricted apps. Let's just see what's there in restricted apps. We can probably, oh, I don't have a bundle ID right now. Okay, no issues. So let's just say that I am putting in just a password related policy. Okay. So what I'm doing is I have selected the password criteria. I'm doing a OK, and now I'm going to save this policy. I'm doing a OK. Just when we click on create is when the magic happens. Okay. When I'm going to click on create, this portal is going to do a REST API call, not with get, but with post. Okay. And it is going to send a request body. The request body is going to contain these settings, what I have configured. Okay. So in the password, I have configured these settings. Whatever I configure is what is going to be contained in the request body. And then it is going to do a 201 kind of a request because we are creating something. How do we confirm that? Let's just create and track it in the developer. So I am doing clear over here, and then let's just do a create. It has been created. Demo device configuration policy. Let's just, oh, I think I didn't do a start. I'm sorry guys. I think we'll have to do this again. Let's just delete this. Okay. Let's just create it again. Demo device device config policy. I am doing this for iOS. I want a device restriction policy wherein the passwords needs to be alphanumeric and the password length should be 10. Okay. All right. We need to start the capture, right? That would make sense. Only then the capture would work. So over here, I'm starting the capture. Let's just make sure that it has started. All right. And then bingo, create. Let's just see what got tracked. I'm going to stop it now. And now I can see a post request. Let's just click on that. Let's just see what this post request is. I can see a response body and a request body. Okay. Obviously, there has to be a request body, right? Let me just click on this, the pretty print. It gives us in a better format. So what this means is when I clicked on create, there and with the HTTPS protocol, there was a post command that was sent to the Intune service, which returned a 201 kind of a result. 201 in HTTPS world means success. In this case, something was created by me, therefore a 201 kind of a request, and the information was in JSON format. Okay. In the request body, I can see what is the information that I sent to the Intune service. And in the response body, I can see what is the information that the Intune service replied with. Okay. Let's see the request body. I created something. I created a device configuration policy with the ID this. The name of the policy is this. The description is this. The OData type is this. The minimum password length is this. Password required type is default. Password required is true. Password minimum character set count is 1. And this is exactly what I set over there. Okay, I selected 10 in the password length. Display name is what I selected. Description is what I selected. OData type signifies what is the kind of policy I'm creating. I am creating a device configuration policy for iOS devices, and I selected that the password required type is true. That is, the device should have a password. The ID, okay. So when I create a policy, every user, every application has a ID, right? When I am creating a policy, I'm telling the Intune service that I want to create a policy with these parameters. But I don't know the ID of the policy. Policy ID is something which the Intune service is going to generate and give it to us randomly. Therefore, the ID is default, that is 0000. So this is the information that I sent under the request body when I clicked on create over here. What did the Intune service reply with? The Intune service response is this. The Intune service created a policy with this ID. Let's just see what's the ID of the policy. The ID of the policy is this, ending with C2. What can we see over here? A policy ending with C2. Okay. This is when the policy was created. This is the created time. The description is, and the display name is in accordance with what I requested the Intune service to make for me. Okay. So I made a request and said that this is the kind of policy I want. This is the kind of policy that Intune service made for me. The things that I mentioned in my request body are going to say the same. Other than that, a lot of other things are going to be appended, like the policy ID, when was it made. Whatever I selected in my policy are going to be true. Whatever I did not select are going to be false, because all the other information in the policy, if I go to the properties, all the other things in the policy are not set, right? So let's just say built-in apps. It's all not configured, right? Meaning false. So how is it showing not configured in the portal? It is showing not configured in the portal because the policy that Intune service made for us set it to false on everything other than what I selected true in the request body. Okay. So whatever I can see over here is the kind of policy that was made by the portal, and exactly is the same thing what I can see over here, which is being displayed. Okay. So I'm just trying to show that whenever I'm creating a policy, it is running a graph call at the background, and then a graph call like this, it's running a graph call in the background, and then it is creating the policy for us. Okay. So let's just do this now. Let's just go back. Okay, this is our policy, demo device config policy. Okay, let me just clear this, start the recording this time, and then demo device configuration policy, go back, stop it. Now you can see that there is no post, there is only get, because all I did was I clicked on a policy and it went to device configuration and then the policy ID, right? So let me grab the policy ID from here, go over here, and then do a device configurations. It's returning right now all the device configuration policy that I have in my portal. Okay, I don't want all of them. I only want a specific policy, the one that I just now created. Okay, so this is the policy that I just now created, and this output is exactly same of the output that we were seeing over there. And over here we can see that we have a value of 10, that is passcode minimum length is 10, the value that we selected when we were making the policy. Okay, so I hope that this is making sense, guys. I mean, this is how exactly things are happening in the background when we are creating a policy. Okay, all right. Now let's just do something. Now let's just create a policy using Graph Explorer. Let's just do a reverse engineering. Right now what we were doing was we were creating a policy using the Ibiza console, and in the background the Ibiza console was making a REST API call, and in that REST API call it was having the request body. In that request body it was having the setting of everything that it needs to tell to the Intune service to create the policy. Now let's just create a policy by running the REST API call from the Graph Explorer and not from the portal. Okay, so before we do that, we need to get hold of that request body. So I did not make a note of it, so let me just do another policy, call it demo test2 test1. Okay, so I'm making a similar kind of policy again. I am doing a iOS, I am doing a device restriction. In the setting I am doing a password, the same thing. I'm going to set the password count to 11 and require password alphanumeric, and the minimum password length is 11. Okay guys, so I'm doing a OK over here. Let me just make sure that this is started, and then I am going to do a create. Okay, so demo test has been created now. Demo test created. Let me go back here, stop it, check the post. Surely there is a post. Let's just see the request body. This is what I requested the Intune service that make a policy for me. I don't have the device, application. I don't have the policy ID. That is something which you are going to give me. But what I have is the name, the display name, and alphanumeric 11 characters. Okay. So this is the REST API call which was made when I was creating from the portal, from the Ibiza console. Now I want to create one from Graph API. So obviously what I'll need is I'll have to go over here, I will have to go over here. I am going into device management, device configuration, and now I am not doing a get, I am doing a post, obviously, because that's what the portal was also doing. The portal was doing a post, and I have to put in a request body wherein I am going to put in the kind of the policy that I want to create. So let's just create a policy called demo graph explorer. Let's just call it a demo graph explorer policy. Demo graph explorer, and I'm creating a policy with let's just say password minimum length is lucky 13. Okay, obviously the policy that I'm creating, I don't have the policy ID. That is something which the Intune service is going to generate for us. Okay, I have this. I'm going into the request body, I'm pasting it over here, fingers crossed, run query. Status code is 201. Right, let's just go back over here and see do we have a policy named demo graph explorer or not. So I am closing this, I'm doing a refresh, and I can see a policy has been created called Demo Graph Explorer. And if I check the properties and go to settings, I should be able to see the password parameter set to 13. Let's just see whether I'm able to or not. I surely can. Okay. So we can create a policy using the Ibiza console. The Ibiza console is making a REST API call and doing a REST API post call and creating the policy for us. Or let's just say for some reason the portal is not working. All we need is the endpoint, and we can go to the Graph Explorer. We can hit the same endpoint and provide an appropriate request body and create any kind of policy that we want to. This is not just related to device configuration, guys. You can use this. Whatever we can do using the Ibiza console is what we can do using the Graph Explorer. So because whatever we are doing in the Ibiza at the back end, it's running a graph call, right? A API call, REST API call. So if we know the endpoint, if we know what to put in the request body, we can create it over here as well. Okay. So this is how it becomes handy. So now let's just see if we can edit a policy or not. Okay. So this is what we had. This is the policy that we have. Okay. Now let's just say that I want to change the password length from 13 to 5. Okay. Now we are editing the existing policy. We're not creating a new policy, right? So obviously now the policy has an ID, right? So I am removing this. I am removing all this. I am changing the password minimum length to 5, and passcode is true, alphanumeric. Okay. So what I'm trying to do, guys, is I have this policy named Demo Graph Explorer, and right now its password is sent to 13. I want to change it to 5. One way of doing that is pressing 5 over here and doing it from the Ibiza, which at the backend is going to do a REST API call. I want to do it from the Graph Explorer. So what I would need is yes, you guessed it right, the ID of the policy. I'll go over here, device configuration. I'll do this. I'll do a get. It should give me information about this policy, right? Does it? I think it does. Okay. It is giving me the information of this policy. Okay. Only this policy and nothing else. Okay. Now I want to patch this, as in I want to edit this. Okay. And when I want to edit this, I obviously now it has a device ID. When we were creating it, we didn't have a device ID. Therefore, we didn't have a policy ID. Therefore, we put in 0000. Now there is a policy ID. We cannot put in 0000. Display name is already there. Description. Okay, let's just do this. Let's just change the display name to Demo Graph Explorer 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Let's just do this. Demo Graph Explorer 1, 2, 3, 4. And the password, change it to 5. Okay. We are not changing anything else. So what we are not changing is what we don't need. We don't need this. Oops. I think I removed the braces. Okay. We have to be very careful when we are doing this because okay, and I don't need this. Guys, this is a mandatory parameter. We have to tell the Intune service what kind of policy we are trying to make or what kind of policy we are trying to edit, and that comes under the OData type. So we are right now dealing with the device configuration policy. Okay, there is no scope tag. I can remove this because right now what I'm doing is I'm doing a patch, right? So I'm editing an existing policy. So I'm only going to provide the information which I am editing. So I'm editing the display name, the description, the length, and OData type is mandate. Fingers crossed. It gave us of 204. So 200 is get, 201 is post, and 204 is patch. Okay, let's just go back over here, close this. I'm going back to device configuration. I'm doing a refresh, and now the demo Graph Explorer has been changed to demo Graph Explorer 1234. And in the properties, surely enough, it should have password set to 5 rather than 13, and there you go, it has a password set to 5. Okay, so whatever I'm trying to achieve via the Ibiza console is what I can achieve using the Graph Explorer as well. Okay, we can create a new policy, we can edit an existing policy, we can patch a policy, we can change a parameter of policy as well. Okay, so what I'm trying to say, guys, is we can just play along with this. You can delete a device as well. So let's just say I'm going to devices, and then I'm going to all devices, and then let's just say that I want to delete a device. This iPad is something which I want to delete. So what I'll be doing is, but I don't know how to delete, or let's just say I want to delete 100 devices. How will I delete 100 devices from the portal? I'll have to select each of them one by one. Or what I can do is I can just delete one of the device, see the Graph API call it is making, and then go to the Graph Explorer and delete it manually. So let's just try and do it once. I'm going to clear this. I am going to start it, and then I am going to click on delete. Yes, I want to delete it. Successfully deleted. I'm going to stop it over here, and then I did a post. The action name is delete and the device ID is this. Okay, so this is something which I can copy it over here. So now I know that when I am deleting a device from the portal, this is the REST API call that the portal is making. So now I can reverse engineer and delete 100 devices from the Graph API. All I'll have to do is automate it somehow. I can have a CSV, feed that CSV with list of those 100 device IDs, and then use Graph API in a way that it calls it. Obviously Graph API cannot, obviously Graph Explorer cannot, because Graph Explorer cannot automate, but there are other tools to do that. So let me just try to delete a device and see whether it's working for me or not. So let me just click on this device. All I need in this is the device ID, right? So I have the device ID over here. I am copying the device ID. I am pasting it over here. Let me see where exactly the call was being made. The call was being made at graphs.microsoft.com, beta device management, manage devices, execute action. Okay, so let's just go there, device management, manage devices, managed devices, and then execute action, and then this is what is going to be my request body, and it is going to be post, because that is what we saw over here. It was doing a post and it went to execute action, fingers crossed, and then the response is 520, status code is 200, right? So now the device should get deleted from the portal. the device with the name, we can do it too. Over here we can see that we did not make any change over here, right? So let's just do a refresh. Okay, it might take some time, and this is something which we can track in the audit logs as well. So from the Graph Explorer, if we are making any change, if we are syncing a device, or I mean if you are making any change from the Ibiza console, that obviously any admin task gets tracked over here. But if we are making any change from the Graph Explorer, it also gets tracked in the portal. So initiated by this is the UPN that was used, application is Graph Explorer, device manager we modified a property, new value is this. So what I'm trying to say, guys, is whatever we are doing from the portal is what we can do from the Graph Explorer, and the same thing gets logged in the audit logs. We can delete a device, we can create a policy, we can delete a device, we can create a policy, we can edit a policy, we can do each and everything that we could have done from the portal. So this is kind of, and this is a interesting stuff, and the more we play along with it, the more we actually try to find, I mean the more we identify that okay, this is what we can reverse engineer it and find out that this is what is happening in the background. Okay, so all right, let's just go back to the presentation now. So this is the demo that I wanted to show you guys. Now let's just talk about how do we integrate Intune with Windows PowerShell. So first we are going to see how we can integrate Intune with Windows PowerShell, and then we will see how we can make use of Windows PowerShell for making those REST API calls. Excuse me. So the REST API calls that we were making using the Graph Explorer, as I said, Graph Explorer cannot do automation. So those REST API calls were one at a time. If we want to make 100 API calls at a time, how do we do that? We use Windows PowerShell. So we have to integrate Windows PowerShell with API. But before we come to that, I want to show you guys this first. I want to integrate Intune with Windows PowerShell. Okay, so how do we integrate Intune with Windows PowerShell? So I have a test machine here with me, and I'm just starting that up. So let's just wait for this test machine to start, and then we will actually see how exactly is it supposed to work. Okay. Okay guys, so finally my machine is up. So as I was showing, you were checking the version. Okay, so this is a different version running at 1802. Okay, all right, what's this? Okay, all right, so let's just open up a PowerShell and see how does it look. All right, there you go. Now machine is running a tad bit faster as well, which is a good thing. Okay, all right. All right, so let's just do this. All right, so like for everything, for managing Intune via PowerShell, we need a Intune module. Okay, so right now you can see that there is no Intune module installed on this machine. So I'm going to install that module right in front of you, and then I'm going to show you how it is supposed to work. Okay, so right now you can see when I do a get module, there is no Intune module. If I do a show command, it should give me a okay, and if I'm checking for any command for Intune, I cannot see any like it should be because there is no module. Okay, so now what I'm doing is okay, let me just go to https://www.google.com. Okay, what I'm going to do now, guys, is I'm going to download and install the Intune module. So all you have to do is I'll show you guys how to do it. Just go to your web browser and type Intune module for Windows PowerShell. Okay, go to the first link that comes up. We are going to get it from the GitHub repository. So we are going to go to GitHub, and then let me just expand this, maximize this for you guys. Okay, all right, so we have to go to the releases, 7 release, and then we have to download this SDK. Okay, just click on that. It's going to do a download, save as. Let's do it in the desktop. It's not very big, it's around 7 MBs in size, so it should be fairly quick. So now let's just go back. I'm going to go to the C drive. This PC, C drive, temp. Okay, I'm just going to delete this, and then I am going to extract all. I'm going to extract it to I'm going to extract the zipped folder which I just now downloaded to C drive temp. Okay, all right, extracted. All right, good. Okay, all right, so now we will in the folder we will be able to see 2 folders, net 471 and net 2.0. so net 2.0 is for other OS, net 471 is for Windows. So I am going to go to that folder, cls cd space temp cd space release okay, cd space net 471, and then I have to run the Windows. I have to run the Microsoft Graph Intune PSD1, which is there at the background. This one I'm talking about. Okay, let's just do an enter. Open. I think it's already installed in my case. Therefore, it gave me that option of opening it. If it's not installed, if the module, if the PSD one is not installed, then it will install it just for us. Or probably I was able to, no, I'm sorry, I think I was supposed to do a import module. Yeah, this is what I was supposed to do. Yeah, there you go. Yes, I'm sorry guys, just ignore my previous step. It's not a PS1 that we can just run it like this. We have to this is a module which we have to import. So yes, we want to, you want to run it? Yes, we want to. Run once, capital R, enter. Run once. Operation is not supported. I'm not exactly sure what happened. Okay, I'm sorry. We will have to do this. Set remote execution policy. We will have to set the remote execution policy to unrestricted. Set execution policy to unrestricted. Okay, yes to all, and then import module r something is wrong. Operation is not supported. Okay guys, apparently there was some issue with my old machine, so I did the same thing with this machine as well. In the C drive I have the release folder wherein I have these two folders. So .NET 4.7.1 is the one which we are going to use for installation. So I browse to that location, import module, graph, and then we are running that file. Hold on. This is the file that we have to run. So I have already set the remote execution policy as unrestricted. I'm running this. Now if I do a show module, sorry, get module, now it's going to show me the module called Microsoft Graph. Okay, now if I do a show command, all right, there you go. So once this module has been imported, it should now involve more commandlets as well. So now I should have okay, so guys, this is what I was doing, just to, I think I was on mute, so just to show it again, what I did was, all right, let me just cancel this. And then the installation of the module was successful, and I did I made sure that it was unrestricted. There was some problem with my earlier machine, therefore I had to switch to a new one. And if I do a get module here, then it shows me the Microsoft Intune module that has been imported. Now with this module comes many more commandlets. So I want to show you guys the commandlets which has come with this module. So I'm just doing a show command now, and the easier way of doing this is doing a show command and then Intune. So these are all the, you can see the commandlets that have come up over here. Okay, so let's just do let's just do an easy one. Let's just do a get-intune app protection policy. We'll do that one, but before we can actually do that, we have to install the Azure AD module as well. So install install module and then Azure AD. Fingers crossed. Alright, so this is actually what we are currently doing is we are integrating Intune with PowerShell. Once this integration is done, then we will integrate API with Windows PowerShell. So this is the first step. I just want to show you guys that even if we are not running the REST API calls, we still have a way of managing Intune via Windows PowerShell. So if you're good with scripting, you can just make use of Windows PowerShell like you normally would, and yeah, this would actually give us a lot more granular control over managing. So if you have to do any kind of scripting, this is going to be very handy. So I'm just waiting for the Azure AD module to get installed, and then I'm going to show you guys the nifty stuff. So yes, it's installing the package now. All right. I just wanted to do this in front of you guys so that you guys know how to set this up. First, install that Intune module from the GitHub and just install it the way I did, and then just install the Azure AD module. So once those two modules are set and installed, then we are actually ready. Okay, so now we can do a get hyphen. First we will have to, before we do this, first we will have to get, remember the first diagram which I showed you guys, we have to get authorized and authenticated. So first we will have to get authorized and authenticated. So the way to do that is using connect hyphen msgraph. Okay, so now we are generating the token which we need. So connect hyphen, I'm going to log in. Okay. All right, so I'm logged in now. Okay, now I can run the Intune commands. So if I do a show command again, and then run a command for the app protection policy, then I should be able to retrieve everything related to app protection policy from my tenant. Okay, so the command is Intune, is get hyphen Intune app protection policy. So get hyphen Intune app protection policy, and if I do a enter, there you go. So this command, this output is actually from my tenant. The credential that I used to log in was for this tenant. So if I go to client apps, and if I go to the app protection policy, whatever I get over here is what I am getting over here. Okay, so let me see if I have anything for devices or not. And I would suggest you guys to make use of the show command, because this is a new module, so we might not know all the commandlets that are present inside of it. We might not have it memorized. Therefore, and you can see it gives us a very granular approach. We can almost get anything and everything. We have a commandlet for everything over here. So get Intune device. I'm looking at device, so I want get hyphen Intune device category. Nope, there is no way of going back. So unfortunately I'll have to run this again. If I click on anything, there are two ways of running it: either seeing the command over there and coming back to the console and then running it, or clicking on the command and over there it's going to ask us the parameters. Okay, so guys, I'm just going through something related to get hyphen Intune managed devices. This is what I'm looking for. So if I click on that, none of the parameters are compulsory. So if I do a run, it's going to auto populate over here. So if I do a enter, over here you can see that it's giving me a list of all the devices that I have in my tenant, and this is equivalent to coming over here and go to devices and then going to all devices. This is equivalent to this, or this is equivalent to this. Device management, manage devices, run query. So I think something happened. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm doing a post. There you go. I have to do a get. So whatever information I'm getting over here is the information. So here's how it's working. When I'm clicking on all devices, at the background, it's doing a REST API call. The same REST API call is what I'm manually doing over here. And when I am running this commandlet, it's doing the more or less the same thing at the background, and it's giving me the same information. The client machine that I have enrolled, the same information for that client machine, and then all the user devices that I have. It's going to give us the same information, the same UPN that were used, the same display name, and everything, whatnot. Okay, so this is how exactly we will be integrating PowerShell with Intune. Right now, we have not done anything with the API. Right now, all we have done is integrated PowerShell with Intune. And just to summarize, the way to do that would be setting the execution policy to unrestricted, and then installing the Intune module from GitHub, and then installing the Azure AD module. And once that is done, you can just do a show command, and then you will be double sure that all the commandlets for Intune are there. Okay, so over here, using this, we can this is how we will be making use of it. Okay, so now let's just do the interesting stuff. Now let's just do a automation. Now we are going to do this part. Now I'm going to do this. Integrating API with Windows PowerShell. Until now, we integrated Intune with Windows PowerShell. Now I want to integrate my API with Windows PowerShell. And to integrate my API with Windows PowerShell, the first thing that I need is an AAD. The first thing that I need, guys, here is an AAD token. And the way to get the AAD token is, let me just go back to the same website. Okay, the same GitHub website. I'm going to post it in the last slide, and which is going to show us how to do that. So let's do this. GitHub plus SCRIP scripts for PowerShell APIs. Okay, so it's actually going to, it should have gone to, is it going to the same link? Let me just make sure. No, it's not. Okay, so let's just go to here, Intune module for PowerShell. I'm going to the same place from wherein I went to the releases and I installed that. Okay, so over here I am going to install one of the, okay, let me see here. This is the link actually I'm looking for. Okay, so let me just actually copy paste this link. You can just make a note of it, github.com, Microsoft Graphs, Microsoft Graph PowerShell Intune samples. So this is wherein we have already posted a few scripts. So I am going to actually show you guys how this works, but before that I want to actually download one script from here. Okay, so the way to do that would be, I want to do something for app, let's just say app protection policy. So I'll be clicking on app protection policy, and then we have to get, it's giving us a description of all the files that are over here. So if we want to add a policy, this is the one. If we want to export, if we want to get, this is what, let me just get this one, managed add managed app policy _get. So this is the script that is there over here. If I look at this script, let's just break this script down, which would actually help us understand what exactly is this doing. This is a PowerShell script. 90% of this script is going to talk about getting an auth token. Okay, this auth token is very important. Once we have this auth token, after that, using that auth token is we are going to do that authorization and authentication, and only then we will be able to make use of the fence. That is, I mean, we will be able to go via the Graph Explorer fence and then do the REST API calls. So let's just see what this PowerShell script is doing. The function is get auth token, and over here it is actually checking that whether the Azure AD PowerShell module is installed or not. If we are running this on a device wherein the Azure AD module is not installed, then it is going to actually install the module for us. It's going to do a install-module Azure AD preview, and then it's going to check whether the module has been successfully installed or not. If the module is not installed, it's just going to give us a error message. And then so until here, the authorization token processing happens. So it's going to check whenever if at any point of time we get a null value, it's going to say that auth token access is null, please re-authenticate, so on and so forth. So I'm just trying to show you guys what this script would do, just a roundabout view. So let me just show you guys this. Let me just copy this entire script. Okay, I am copying this entire script, and then I have copied the script. I will be running it. Before running it, let me just go over here, and then I'm going to open up a PowerShell ISE. So let's just do that. There you go. Windows PowerShell ISE, right click, run as an administrator. Yes. Okay, there you go. It's there in the background. I am going to open up a pane for me. I'm just going to paste it. Okay, before I actually run this, I want to show you guys there is a variable called $auth token. Right now there is nothing in this variable. Okay, so I am just going to run this now. It's going to ask me for a UPN. Right now I'm running that script, and I'm running this script which I got from GitHub. What this script does is it gives me a list of the app protection policy that is there in my tenant. So obviously if I'm running it on a device, it's going to ask me for a UPN, right? So it's asking me for the UPN now. So I'm going to enter it at the rate nuggetlabs.onmicrosoft.com. It's going to ask me for, let's just see if it's asked me for something else. Okay, it's going to populate, and it's going to tell me to sign in with my password. Okay, I just signed in with my password. Now it's going to run a lot of queries in the background, and then make sure the script is going to run. It's going to make sure that I have all the modules installed or not. Okay, so once that it is done, it is going to give me a list of all the app protection policy that are there in my lab. Okay, so this is actually not what I wanted to show you guys. What I wanted to show you guys is this. once this script is run, what the script, as I was showing you the breakdown of the script, what the script is mainly doing is, first it is getting a auth token, okay, and once that auth token is there, then it is running few checks and making sure that all the modules are installed. Once the modules are installed, then it is connecting to our tenant and getting the information of what it is supposed to do, like getting us the information of the app protection policies. Okay, so the primary thing what this is doing is, this is getting the auth token for us, which is incumbent for us to run the REST API calls. Okay, so I actually did not need the app protection policies. All I needed was the auth token. So I ran that. A part of that script created the auth token for me when I entered my username and password. I could have just copied that portion and ran it, but I wanted to run the entire thing. Now this variable actually contains the auth token. Okay, let's just see what exactly is this auth token. So let me just do a FL. This actually gives me the entire information of this auth token. This is actually a JWT. This is a JSON web token which is used. So let me just show you guys. Let me just copy this token, and then let me just go to a web browser. You guys can do it as well. And then let me just go to my base machine, and we have to go to a website called jsonwebtoken.io. This is actually a decoder. Okay, so over here what I'm doing is I am entering the web token. Okay, so I am going to copy the web token that I got from here. So I copied it, Control C. I'm coming over here, Notepad, just make sure that it has been copied. Yes, it has been. I am coming over here, I'm pasting it, and let's just see what this web token contains. If I come on the right hand side, the payload of the web token is, this web token is used for authentication and authorization to https://graphs.microsoft.com. It has been issued to Saurabh Sarkar, that is me, and it has to be used by the application Microsoft Intune PowerShell. Okay, these are all the rights that has been assigned to this token. So if you remember, when we go to graphs.microsoft.com and when we do that modify permission thing, then we provide the access, right? So this is the access which this token has. So this is the token that is actually going to be used. Okay, so now I am going to make use of this token. Okay, so the command, so now I'm going to do the actual thing. So when I said that I am going to integrate REST API calls with Windows PowerShell, this is how I'm going to do it. Okay, so guys, let me just do a CLS. The command is invoke -rest method. Okay, now the URI, in the URI we have to put in the information, we have to put in the endpoint. Okay, so let me just go to my Graph Explorer and let me just do this. Let me just go to manage devices and take this URI. Okay, and do a paste over here. Okay, and now in the header I have to put in the auth token. Okay, so AUTH auth token, and the method that I'm going to use is a get. Okay, let me just do a enter. Okay, what is it showing? Manage devices. It's not showing what I wanted to see. Let's just do it again. Manage data. It's just giving me the number of devices. I'm not exactly sure why. Uh, let's just go to device management and then managed devices, and then let me just put in a device ID over here. If I don't want everything about all the device, I'm just putting in one device ID, and like we normally would, I'm running a query. Now I want to get that information over here. Okay, so I am changing this. I'm changing the URI to this. Okay, so now it is giving me the correct information. Okay, so now it is giving me the information which I would have got if I ran the query over here. So if I run the query over here, what it's showing is it's showing me that I'm hitting this device, the name of the device is this, enroll date, enroll time, and all the information related to this device, right? Related to this device client machine which has this ID. Okay, if I do the same thing from here, if I go to client devices, in the background it runs invariably the same REST API call. Now how do I make the same REST API call from Windows PowerShell? This is how I do it, and it's going to give me the same information as you can see in this screen: the client machine name, the last sync date, the last sync time. So this output is exactly same. This output is what we are getting if we are running a REST API call to this endpoint, and this is the same output as we would get as if we ran the REST API call from the Graph Explorer to that same endpoint. Okay, so we just need to do this. We just need to make sure that we have that token has been generated, and the way to do that is just going to that script, any script from GitHub, and a part of that script shows how exactly to generate the token. So what I usually do is I just generate the token, run that script, it gets me the token, and then I play along with it. Okay, so to sum it up, this is how we would be integrating REST API with Graph. The invoke REST method is what we have to use, and let's just say that I don't want to do a get, I want to do a post. The same thing I can do over here as well. So if I do this, instead of method, if I do a post, then there has to be a, let me just show you guys. Okay, there is this body parameter, and this body we have to provide the information in the JSON format. Okay, in the JSON format we will be providing the information which we would be providing if we were doing it from the Graph Explorer in the request body. So if we are creating a policy from the portal at the backend, what it is doing is it's creating a policy for us, and then it's doing a REST API call when it's sending the request body and the request parameter, which if you remember, when we made that policy manually, we put in that information over here. We will be putting the same information over here, and instead of get, we will be doing a post parameter, and in the body we will be putting in the policy ID and whatnot, and then it will be creating the policy for us. So I mean, what I'm trying to say, guys, is if we want to create a policy or delete a device or do something like that, there are many ways of reaching that destination, using the Ibiza console, or we can use the Ibiza console, we can use the Graph Explorer, or we can use the PowerShell by integrating it with the API. So there are many ways of doing that. The background is the same. At the back end, we have to cross the wall. We have to go through that wall, go through that hole, go through that API, get the data, modify the data. We can do it via going through the fence that is Graph Explorer, or we can integrate the REST APIs with our PowerShell, and then we can use the invoke command method and make use of it. So guys, this is just the basic of this. We can, I would suggest you guys just play with the invoke REST method, try to run various graph API various API calls, and try to get all the information which we would from the portal, which we would from the Graph Explorer, try to meddle with it, try to delete a policy from the portal, from the Ibiza console, from the Graph Explorer, and from PowerShell, try to modify it, try to do a get, post, put, and then see how exactly it is working. And then we can actually do an automation as well. We are currently in PowerShell, we are doing an invoke REST method for one URI, right? We can do it for several URIs. So we know how to do that. We will just be feeding. So in PowerShell, the way of automating it over here is same as what we would normally automate it. So we just have to do an input file from any CSV, and then we could just export it to a export CSV. So if we know in PowerShell, if we know how to run it for one endpoint, we can automate it and run it for several endpoints the way we would be usually doing it. Okay. So in the useful links in this section, you can just go to the GitHub link, and it gives us the basic insight of how exactly we would be running the normal policies, as in getting the list of devices and getting app protection policy. Once we have the basic things, all we need is the auth token, and then once we identify the endpoint, we can make our own query, put that in the Graph Explorer and make use of it, or put that in the PowerShell and make use of it. Okay. So guys, the world is your playground. Just start with the exploring and make your own scripts. Just don't run it in production. Just run it in your own lab. Make sure that whatever output you're getting in the Ibiza console is the one you're getting from the Graph Explorer, is the one that you're getting via PowerShell. Okay. So guys, I hope this has been informative for you. I would like to thank you for viewing. This is your friend Saurabh Sarkar signing off.